sort of a watchmaker.
It's not the kind of thing that you would talk to in your prayers or go to church to.
Right. But also we have a self-reporting problem. I used to tell people when I lobbied and explaining the Louisiana legislature to people from other states. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, well, we have 144 members, 143 Christians. That was when Jay Darden was in the Senate. So we had one Jewish member, and everybody else said they were a Christian, officially.
Yes.
Do you think that's true? No, I don't think that's true.
Well, you can't get elected to office if you say that you're an atheist.
And in Louisiana...
What I call CNOs. Christians in name only.
Yeah,
right.
Well...
So, you run into the self-reporting problem.
Yeah, but
in order to get elected, you've got to say certain things. And
you have to now.
In Louisiana, that's... One of them is religion.
Yes, but back in the early days of this country, and it was you could get elected without being a church-going person, and without this country was not founded as a Christian nation. It may now be full of Christians, but that's not what the government is.
Well, what's interesting is, and I also found a quote from Thomas Paine that I thought was sort of interesting.
If you want to talk about
Paine, he says this, quote, "I consider myself in the hands of my Creator, and that he will dispose of me after this life consistently with his justice and goodness." Another quote I have from him, "We believe in the existence of a God and the immortality of the soul."
Who was we? When he said we, who was we?
I guess he believed maybe along with some of his other founding fathers.
All right. Well, let me throw a few of them in.
Now, Patrick Henry was another strong proponent of traditional religion. Now, I also read that Alexander Hamilton was initially not very religious, but after the death of his son, turned more toward religion toward the latter part of his life.
Well, let me see. All right. Now, you've brought in a few. I'm going to bring in a few.
Okay, sure.
And not necessarily starting at the beginning, but I'm looking here at John Adams. Mm-hmm. And he says, the United States of America have exhibited perhaps the first example of governments erected on the simple principles of nature. In the formation of the American governments, it will never be pretended that any persons employed in that service, that means writing the Constitution, had interviews with gods or were in any degree under the influence of heaven. These governments were contrived merely by the use of reason and senses. That was John Adams. Thomas Jefferson, and I think you know how he stands, and he says here, popular history avoids mentioning that Jefferson, the chief creator of American democracy, was a skeptic who wrote many attacks on the clergy and who was denounced as, quote, a howling atheist, a hardened infidel, and an enemy of religion. That was Jefferson. All right. Now, I can go to some others. But
now, why then in the Declaration of Independence is the word creator used?
Because you had to say something. You, I'm sure, are one of the people who has read John Locke and know that much of the language was borrowed from Locke's thoughts. Mm-hmm. And when you are going to... Locke was the one who said that you could throw off a government and establish a new one under certain conditions. And that's what the Declaration does. In order to do that, you have to appeal to a higher authority, some higher authority. So Jefferson had to put something in there. And he carefully put in creator. Not God.
He didn't say God. Yeah, he didn't mention Jesus.
Very carefully used the most nondescript sort of
reference to a higher power.
Authority. A higher authority than the king.
And it's important
and that's
also
what's important,
to note.
Only higher than the king, not a higher authority in the sense of a supreme being.
It's also important to note that the Declaration of Independence is not the document that says how this government is to be operated.
Right. It's also not even a document
that's where we're talking about the separation.
It's not even a document of the United States. It is a document that set up the separation from...
Let's then look at what we're looking at, like here in Washington. And I have a reference here about how the Supreme Court in its own building has 3 depictions of Moses or the 10 Commandments. A sergeant of arms every day begins the court by saying, "God bless the United States in this court." It's in the Capitol building. It's on the Liberty Bell with scriptures in the Liberty Bell. we start Congress, a chaplain there with a prayer.
Let me say this.
It's intertwined in everything.
I think the time has come to eliminate all of those infractions, which are obviously
take down the Supreme Court.
Take down if they want to show Moses as a lawgiver, that's okay.
And that's
doesn't say he got the laws from God. He was just a lawgiver. That's all right.
And the tablets do not show the Ten Commandments.
Say that again. No, you couldn't read them. It's just some pages there. But the lawsuits.
People know what it is, though, Michael. Wouldn't you say?
Listen, it's a tough road to try to get this country back into what the founding fathers intended. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying.
Well, and I guess we're going to have a disagreement about that. We have the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's also talk about that. We've got our currency. Let's talk about that.
But neither of those things go back to the founding areas.
They go back to the anti-communism
50 years
stuff.
Those were recent. Recent.
Jeff, I hate to say this, but I remember it.
Right.
And my wife Phyllis was very angry because she said she had just learned the pledge when they put those other words in it, and she had to memorize it all over again.
We have only a couple of minutes left, and I know you came with some notes about various things. Or is there something you would just like to say in the next minute or so to our audience?
Well, I would just like to, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and encourage everyone, if they can, to watch our program on TV and listen to our radio show where we get into topics from different points of view and try to stimulate people to think about the issues. And then also my monthly event, I'd like to encourage everyone to join us at a place called the Cricket Club, where we have a show called Politics with a Punch, which is a panel. We call it Louisiana's version of Politically Incorrect.
It's a comedy. And
we focus on having fun because they're comedians on the panel.
Yes, I've been to those shows, and I would recommend them very highly, and I recommend your other shows. And again, we have to thank you for being here. And appreciate your
have me back. I'd love to come back.
Well, we can do another show, and we'll try to arrange that, Jeff. And I want to thank you folks who are watching our show, and hope to see you again. Thank you.